follow, but I can't lose this.
For the third week in a row, the drivers of the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain Championship have to take on a legendary UK circuit. This week we are bringing you racing from Donington Park. Brilliant, fantastic circuit, undulating, fast and tricky. Overtaking will be an issue, but these drivers will find their way through. My name is Paul Smith. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Arjuna Kankapati, and unfortunately Connor is busy elsewhere on other coverage, so it's us two instead, but we're in safe hands with Arjuna. But right now, let's just have a look first of all at the schedule. So the week one we were at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. Then Upton Park last week, we saw how tricky that was to make some moves, but a double win for Sebastian Job last week has helped him out. Donington Park this week for another 2 races, then Snetterton in a week's time. Then we get a break before we head on over to Le Mans on Valentine's Day for a 45-minute race. Donington Park, then we're back here on the 21st of February around the shorter national circuit, then Silverstone, and finally ending off with Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix loop. So that is the schedule as it stands. And now here's the standings. 21 points is the gap now for Sebastian Job after that double victory and pole position last week at Upton Park. Some tremendous racing. Kevin Ellis Jr., he'll be disappointed that he got caught up in a few things, and in that second race, that epic final lap battle between himself and Sebastian, just not able to come out on top of that one. Graham Carroll finding himself in a good position in 3rd place right now, with Josh Thompson just ahead of Pete Berriman. The returning Isaac Price to iRacing, he's in 6th ahead of Jack Sedgwick. Jamie Fluke in 8th ahead of John Robertson. And Blair Mann rounds out your top 10 standings. So this is Donington Park. We're on the Grand Prix loop here. Turn 1, Red Gate. One of your overtaking opportunities. Turn 4, which is the old hairpin. You've got to get your run out of that corner right before you head on up to McLean's. The S's then, turn 9 and 10, the chicane at the end of Starkey Straight, and then Melbourne Loop, the hairpin at turn 11. That'll be an overtaking spot, as will Goddard's at turn number 12. 12-turn course. It's a 4.02 kilometre track here at Donington Park, and there's plenty of undulation, as I mentioned, at this venue. So this is the way things will run. So we're currently just moved into qualifying right now. 20 minutes of open qualifying to all cars out there on track at the same time. Race 1 then, it's a 25-minute race. You then get a little bit of a break between the 2 races, 10 minutes, and then race 2, the second race there, with the top 6 finishers from race 1 having their places reversed on the grid. So we always get plenty of action here at Donington Park, and as qualifying is underway, I will welcome Arjuna. Arjuna, I mean, what a sensational track this is, and look at all those Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars out there.
Oh, it's fantastic, Paul. Qualifying underway, and you know, I've been watching on with great intrigue from the sidelines. The story for me here is Sebastian Job. He's a world champion, Paul. Now he's trying to, in effect, become a national champion. This is kind of what you see as drivers progress up through the ranks, you know, learn their skills. They go through club level to regional to national to then the world stages. Job is doing this the other way around, but he's being chased by many other drivers who aren't world champions yet and want this championship.
So, I will bring out my Formula 1 history right now. There is another person who won a world championship before winning a particular national championship. Jim Clark won the Formula 1 World Championship in 1963. The following year, he won the British Saloon Car Championship. So it shows that it can be done, and you can have that happen here. And again, this is another unique thing of this championship. Because it's a fixed setup here, they're not having to put the same amount of time in trying to get every minute detail of the setup right. You've just got to make sure you get a feel of how the car is around the track.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we talked to Seb Job here at RaceSpotTV over the course of the last year, and one thing he talked about was his transformation over the winter and really evolving the way that he tried to approach sim racing. And I think, you know, we saw a shortened winter over the past year, Paul, because of our shifting World Championship schedule. I think that's meant the likes of Apex Racing Team have really had to increase their stature, and we see a lot of their representatives here today.
Well, a few of our drivers are giving us a little bit of a glimpse into what they're doing right now. 4 of you drivers out there. You've got Craig Williams in the top left, Jamie Fluke then top right, and then bottom left, Kevin Ellis Jr., and bottom right, Sebastian Job. Those two, of course, had that epic battle at the end of the second race last week at Donington Park. But, as we say, qualifying is underway. The first few qualifying times are up on the board. You can see them on the left-hand side. Pete Berryman then from the UK, Apex Racing Team driver. He is in provisional pole position by 0.187 of a second ahead of Kevin Ellis Jr., who's one of his teammates from Apex Racing Team, and John Robertson making it an Apex Team 1, 2, 3. But of course, there is no teammates in this championship. It is, of course, an individuals championship as Pete gets out of it, lets people by. But Arjuna, you know, it's all well and good saying that you've got teammates out there, but it is an individual championship.
Yeah, very much so. And I think your teammates, especially in a championship like this, have to help you more when it comes to your preparations, all of that testing and figuring out how you want to approach your race weekends. Once it comes down to race day, it's all about what you want to do as Berryman down onto pit lane.
Yeah, so this is where you're seeing drivers give themselves a new fresh set of tyres. But we're on board with Jamie Fluke then. And Jamie, well, he's currently in second place. He's still out there on that first set of tyres. We're seeing this from teams where they'll have a couple of laps, get those fast laps in, come in, change tyres, get enough a stint in to try and beat those qualifying times, and then have one final stint, go into the pits and go for a last dash here in qualifying. It's an intriguing format, and it really does give us some drama on occasion. Jamie Fluke, though, second place, only 0.1 off of his teammate Pete Berryman. Apex Racing Team currently 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas Graham Carroll down there in 6th place, and Sebastian Job, I don't even see him as he's way down. In fact, he hasn't set a lap time yet as Sebastian.
Yeah, not sure exactly what's happening for Job as he winds himself up here in qualifying, but still 12 minutes on the board, Paul, so he doesn't have to really get concerned right now. He's got a train of cars behind him as he works down in towards, this is, I believe, Coppice Corner on towards our back straight, and this is going to be an important run, Paul. Down in towards that chicane, as we see, I believe that's Lewis Goodway who's going to have to pull to the side of the track. It's a passing opportunity. If you want to be brave, you can go too wide down here.
Certainly can. So Sebastian, he's on a out lap at the moment. He's just getting his tyres up to temperature and pressures onto the brakes. So we'll give you a little bit of onboard action here with Sebastian. In fact, he's going to let the other guys go past him there. And he's just backing out. He's trying to find himself a space. And this is the difference here. When you've got open qualifying, you've got to get yourself the space in qualifying. But comes out of the final corner at Goddard's. Onto the power. Slowly bring the car over to the left-hand side of the track then. Into Redgate corner. Watch out for pit exit there. Drivers have to be careful leaving the pits. Through Redgate. Onto the power. Nice and early. Through this right here. Hollywood, then down through the Carrera curves. Keep it over to the left if you can and get onto the brakes for the old hairpin. Carry the speed. You've got to carry the speed through here to then go up through under Starkey's Bridge up towards McLean's then. You can take a couple of different lines into here. In fact, you're seeing the cars in front taking different lines there through McLean's. It works either way. And then keep it to the left here, up to Coppice. It's a blind apex. You cannot see that apex curve, so you have to be careful not to pick up an off-track penalty, which will invalidate your lap. Get the car over to the right-hand side, down Starkey, straight in towards the S's, braking at about the 100-metre board. Launch over the curbs here. Careful again not to get an off-track penalty so easily done. Keep to the left-hand side then. The Melbourne hairpin, hard onto the brakes. This is the slowest point of the track. Really slow down into there. That is going to be an overtaking opportunity down there in the race. And then up to Goddard's. It's an uphill braking, and Sebastian down the inside is compromised. He's compromised on his lap again. That was Josh Thompson that was tripping over there, Arjuna. So we saw the onboard lap there, but again, not a good lap. 20th, on the 20th for Sebastian.
Yeah, he got stuck behind Thompson coming into that final corner. Don't think he was too impressed. Wonder if the headlights were flashing there, but again, he wound himself up for one more lap, and he still got the opportunity to come down pit lane, get some fresh rubber if needed, Paul, and head back out into track. Pete Berryman, though, he's 1/10 of a second clear from his teammate. The rest of his teammates as well, 1st through 4th. Impressive showing right now from the Apex Racing team.
Yeah, it certainly is. Isaac Price, though, he keeps on getting better in this championship. The more experience he's getting in this championship and the more he's getting back used to being on iRacing, he really is coming through. So Isaac has been, the first 2 rounds of the championship has just been about getting points, getting himself back into the swing of things, not getting involved in any silly incidents. And that's what Isaac has done here in this championship. I think around here today, Arjuna, we could see him really starting to maybe assert himself a little bit.
He's got a lot of experience on other simulators, and it sometimes takes people a couple of weeks and a couple of races to get used to the differences between different simulators. Price is a previous World Championship competitor, Paul. He's got that experience in the past, and he's taken a couple of weeks to get his bearings, and like you say, he's in the top 10 in the championship. What can he do then as we head into this middle portion of the seasons? Our standings start to take shape. The storylines are starting to shake out as well. It's a very interesting portion of our season.
Pete Berryman has just gone even faster in pole position, so he's just had a new lap time of 1:28.878. So that pulls him clear of Kevin Ellis Jr. now by a couple of tenths of a second. So Berryman, he's really found the sweet spot here with this car. He's dragging along one of his compatriots. You can see that they're matching team drivers by their paints as they come through McLean's once again. That is the number 86, which is John Robertson. John, who's down to 6th place in qualifying. Sebastian Job up to 4th. Graham Carroll 5th. So now Seb has found himself a bit of space, and so too has Graham Carroll. So they've now progressed forward in qualifying. So John Robertson, the iRacing Rallycross driver, he was a competitor and almost a champion in that championship until the final round. He led the championship in Rallycross. He is in this field in 6th place at the moment. But yeah, seeing these drivers coming through Goddard's, and we're going to see them come on to the start and finish straight then. So the 55, well, in fact, Sebastian Job heads onto pit road. He's getting his final pit stop here right now. And Kevin Ellis Jr. then, he's on an outlap at the moment. So he'll be really going for it to the end now. He'll be trying to get everything absolutely tip-top and perfect for him into the final stages of this qualifying. This is what I love about open qualifying. You've got that mixture of drivers being out there on track together. You could get drivers maybe tripping up over each other, like we saw with Sebastian Job a little bit earlier on. But Kevin now into turn 1. The man from Glasgow down he plunged downhill. You don't get this does not give you the impression of just how steep it is down into the old hairpin. I've been to this track a few times myself, and it's quite the trek when you have to get back up to your car when you've been watching down at the old hairpin. But up to McLean's then, the highest point of the track coming up, which is Coppice. You've got East Midlands Airport to the left-hand side of you there, so you get all the aviation fuel burn that layers onto the track there, so it can be a little bit slippy here at Donington. Down towards the S's once again. Kevin, how's he getting on? He's not really improving on this lap, but he's still giving it a good go. But yeah, Arjuna, we're into that final 5.5 minutes of qualifying, and as I say, I absolutely love open qualifying as the two cars in front can't decide what they're doing.
Oh, I'm not sure if Kevin's going to be too impressed as that car's going to bail. You made a point just a few moments ago, Paul. You talked about the elevation changes. It's hard to see them on these onboards as Ellis comes around the final corner, but more importantly, it's hard to really see just how much this Porsche 911 Cup car slides around these various corners. It's a interesting challenge that these drivers have on their hands as Kevin Ellis Jr. stays in that second position, unable to better his time. It's one of the more fun challenges I've tried here on the iRacing service, and you know what? With these fixed setups, looks like drivers are having a lot of fun.
Certainly does, and they're going to give us a good show, that's for sure. Standings as they are at the moment then, still Pete Berryman provisionally on pole position with Kevin Ellis Jr. second, Jamie Flukes on pit road. He's got his final tyre change done and he's heading out for his final run. Sebastian Job, Graham Carroll 4th and 5th ahead of John Robertson, Isaac Price. There was Jack Sedgwick we were just quickly looking at. In fact, Graham Carroll's just pulling over to the side there of Coppice just to get himself into the right slot, keep out the way of people. Yeah, Isaac Price is 7th ahead of Jack Sedgwick in 8th place. Simeon Lynch, good qualifying from him so far, in 9th place. Jamie Moon, who we were actually a little bit impressed with in race number 1 at Silverstone, he's in 10th place. There we go, there's Jamie on screen right now, heading down towards the Melbourne Loop once again. So 10th place for Jamie at the moment. Kieran Harrison and Miroslav Nastalchik in 11th and 12th place. And Josh Thompson, one of the drivers in the top 10 of the championship, stuck down in 13th place in qualifying. Oh, that he won't be happy at all.
You've got Thomas O'Leary behind him. Running wide through that second to last corner. Thompson not having the best of run. Oh, and almost gets hit from behind as well. He's going to reset and try and re-rack himself for the final 3 minutes of qualifying, Paul. But like you said, Thompson, the pressure's on. One final opportunity for qualifying here.
Don't forget, in qualifying here, when that clock strikes 0, that is it. There is no extra time. And Josh, just getting across the line when he did, might have just given himself the opportunity for 2 laps, but it will be extremely tight for him to get 2 laps in. So we'll focus on Josh here as he comes down the crane of curves. I can tell you as well, Pete Berryman is improving his times as well in Sector 1 with a purple. So improvements coming from drivers still in qualifying here. Up towards McLean's for this time. Thompson, you can see him working the wheel. You can see how much they're having to just manoeuvre the car about. Turned in a little too early there to Coppice, I feel. That'll compromise him through and down onto the Starkey Straight. Again, a little bit of undulation change. Go over the crest and then another crest right when you're braking into the chicane. The S's up over the curbs. Thompson giving it everything at the moment. He's got a slipstream from in front of him, so he'll be happy with that. The car's not getting in his way either. Melbourne hairpin. Get on the power. You can see the wheel wanting to snap away. Sebastian Job is up to second place in qualifying. He's got chance to be able to get one more lap in if he chooses to as well. But here comes Josh Thompson down in 14th place. What can he do across the line? It's going to be an improvement, but not by much. Only up to 10th place for Josh.
But top 10 puts him in a much better starting position. Every position matters in this mid-pack, Paul, so that's important. Sebastian Job, though, that last-ditch qualifying lap, a 128.913. He's 0.03 of a second slower than Pete Berryman, but the fight is well and truly on.
Well, we saw Pete and Sebastian battling away at Silverstone in those races there, and even at the start of the Alton Park round, how Berryman was able to compete with Sebastian. Sebastian giving it everything through the S's. I don't know whether he'll have picked up an off-track penalty there, taking that much curb and grass, but there's only 40 seconds remaining here in qualifying. What can Sebastian do? Can he improve his time? He only needs to find 3.5 hundredths of a second into Goddard's for the final time, and he's bailing. He is not going to complete that lap. So Pete Berryman still provisionally on pole position. Jamie Fluke's out there. He's not going to get to the end of the lap here. So really, I would say that we have got qualifying pretty much done and dusted. There's just one car going past the line now, but yeah, that is going to be qualifying done and dusted, and Barney, the flagman, waiting patiently for the start of this first race of the afternoon. Now let's take a look then at your starting grid. Pete Berryman and Sebastian Job on row number 1, ahead of Kevin Ellis Jr. and Jamie Fluke, with Graham Carroll and John Robertson rounding out row 3. Jack Sedgwick with Isaac Price row 4, then it's Simeon Lynch and Josh Thompson row number 5, Bat Horston and Jamie Moon row number 6 for them. Kira Harrison and Miroslav Nastalchik in the 14th place on row 7, row 8 for Matthew Dorrington and Matt Emery, with Raphael Jersh and Thomas O'Leary on row number 9. Row 10 is going to be Ryan Parkins and Craig Williams. Lewis Goodway and Fraser Williamson on row 11, ahead of Jordan Weeks and William Martin on row 12. And then finally, at the back of the grid, all on their own, in 25th and 26th places, are Liam Ninch and Josh Webster. So that is your qualifying done and dusted. Very, very quickly then, our Juno, thoughts for the start of this race?
It's going to be fun. What can Berryman do? Job, very impressive late in qualifying. And this is just our first race of the day. We've got 2 of these to go, Paul. It's going to be fun.
Certainly. So as the drivers get themselves prepared on the grid, we're just waiting for 1 or 2 of the drivers there. Barney, the flagman, patiently waiting to give the signal to go racing. I'm looking forward to this one. Donington Park, it's a legendary track, and these cars are very suited to this Grand Prix layout, GT racing. But getting ready, revs rise. Getting ready for race number 5 of the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. Away we go from the start. Pete Berryman, great launch from pole position. Sebastian Job having to tuck in behind him. He's trying to go around the outside. That's not going to work. Kevin Ellis Jr. is in 3rd place, but he's compromised through a red gate. Down through the crane of curves for the first time. Everybody's making it clean so far. And Jamie Fluke, 4th place ahead of Graham Carroll in 5th. Old hairpin. For the first time, Pete Berryman is off. Berryman is off. Something's happened between him and Job. There's another car off in the background. That's William Martin. Oh my goodness, the pole position sitter of Pete Berryman has dropped down the order here on lap number 1. He's all the way down to 25th. He's at the back of the pack, you could see him, but that means that Kevin Ellis Jr. now leads this race. Sebastian Job in second ahead of Jamie Fluke. Graham Carroll up to 4th with Jack Sedgwick. John Robertson as they head down to the chicane, and Jack Sedgwick actually losing position to Robertson. So Robertson up to 5th, but Horston is up to 7th. There's contact between two drivers. Around goes Josh Thompson. It goes from bad to worse for Josh Thompson here, and he drops all the way down. We're going 3 wide. There's a car going straight on at the Melbourne hairpin as well. My goodness, this is an action-packed lap, and we've not even finished lap 1. We're going 3 wide further back in your field into Goddard for the first time. Sort yourselves out, everybody. We've got another 23.5 minutes to go here, but there's your race leader under attack from Sebastian Job to the inside. Can Ellis Jr. hold that outside line? You get on the power earlier, but he's given away the inside line down through Hollywood into the Craner curves, and that gives you the inside line for the old hairpin. Ellis Jr. though can get the cut back, get on the power nicely here. It's a nice sweeping run through there up to McLean's then, and still they're battling at the front of your field. Ellis Jr. and Job of course had that sensational battle at Upton Park last time out. But wow, Arjuna, dramatic first lap here, and even a dramatic second lap here so far.
We'll get to the replays at some point, I'm sure, but these guys out front, 25 minutes, they want to get things done early. Ellis Jr. with a very impressive start. He managed to catch Sebastian Job by surprise. I think there was a bit of contact between Job and Berryman. We'll get a look at that in just a few moments' time, but as we get ready to complete lap 2, it's looking like a 6-car breakaway at the front of the field.
Yeah, those drivers at the front doing a really good job here. They're trying to break away then at the front, 6 of them trying to move forward and clear the rest of the grid as they come across the line. End of lap 2 then. Here's a replay then of the start. Oh, that's the slightest of contact there potentially between the two of them, but you've got to remember you're on the brakes there, so the weight transfer is moving the weight to the front. It lightens up the rears. Oh, we can't see on that screen because of the trees being in the way. It's a tricky one, is that. Here we go, another look into the old hairpin. Oh, do you know what? No, I think Berryman just lost that with cold tyres.
Might also be just a little bit of pressure. There's William Marden as well, who gets onto the grass and gets sideways, and fortunately not into the barrier. We saw one big other moment, Paul, and that was Josh Thompson. Take a look at this replay.
Yeah, so this was Thompson. This is out the S's side by side. You can't really get side by side through the S's. I know Josh was not happy with that in the chat, but that's a heck of a dive down the inside. Fair credit to make the move, and then Thompson, well, he didn't like the move there, but I'm sorry, but the driver was there. They made the apex.
It's a bold move there. I think that was Bart Horston potentially. Not exactly sure who that second car was, but it's a bold move. They made it work. They were side by side, and unfortunately, I think that curb squeezed Thompson into that other car. And now look at this though, Paul. Sebastian Job trying to run away.
Well, Kevin Ellis Jr. has dropped down to 5th place. That's why. So it's Jamie Fluke in 2nd place ahead of Graham Carroll in 3rd. So Kevin Ellis Jr. with an issue on that last lap, a 131.3 compared to the 129.1 that Sebastian Job has done. So Kevin having issues out there. Oh yes, that's a big issue. Just getting wheels onto, just the slightest of wheel onto the grass. Cuts across the curb. That means that he has to serve a slowdown penalty as well. So that exacerbates things, but just ever so slightly back end swings around. Well held though to keep it in the point in the right direction.
well put, but somehow he manages to keep that car under control. He slots in right in front of Jack Sedgwick, it looks like, so he was able to stay in the top 5. So Ellis now has to try and recover for that. There is still the potential here, Paul, for a podium finish.
He certainly could get that. That's absolutely don't look past Kevin for that. He is a driver on form this year. Had a really good start to the year. Very good start to this championship as well. Into Goddard's once again. So now everything's starting to settle down here a little bit now. So these drivers have got themselves in a queue of traffic. Isaac Price is kind of hanging on to the back of this front 6 drivers. Kieran Harrison, good driving from him so far, up into 8th place. There's the driver of Jamie Fluke at the wheel, working the wheel then, trying to go through the old hairpin onto the power, carry the speed through there. Sebastian Job in front by a second, so he'll still be getting a slipstream from Sebastian, but he's not really able to keep with him at the moment, although his last lap was a 10th faster than Sebastian.
The gap is extending, and here comes Job's teammate Graham Carroll in the 21. I wonder how impatient Graham Carroll will be in this situation. Also watch out for John Robertson. You mentioned that he was very close to becoming a world champion recently, Paul. He only lost that title in the final round to his teammate. Him and Johan Harth were so impervious and so impressive throughout the season. Robertson now in a very different discipline of racing in the top 5. Very strong performance.
And the thing is, with rallycross, it's that he competed in, it's intense, it's fast, it's frenetic, and you're involved in close quarters with other cars, which is ideally suited then for this championship, because these drivers, especially at the start there, run close. Oh no, Lewis Goodway, issues at the Melbourne hairpin. Has he got onto the power too early, or has he been helped around there? Let's see on the replay. And yep, it's just on the power too early. And we've mentioned it in previous rounds of this championship. With that being a rear-engined car, once the back end goes around, it acts like a pendulum, and away you go.
I think it's also this fixed setup. We have a lot of World Championship competitors in this field, Paul. They're used to having the ability to tweak the car to their liking. So I wonder if some of these drivers may be just finding that without the adjustments that maybe they're accustomed to, they're struggling a little bit more. Here comes Pete Berryman, though, trying to recover up through the field.
Yeah, so up to 17th. Remember, he did fall back to 25th. At the end of the first lap, so Pete has got his foot down. The 25 there, which is Ryan Parkins, going for a bit of an excursion at McLean's, but we'll carry on through Coppice. But Berryman, he's on the charge here. He's trying to catch up. In fact, forget about that. Look near the front, because Kevin Ellis Jr. down the inside of John Robertson, and that's opened the door to Jack Sedgwick as well. So Robertson's got to be careful here. Manages to hold on to that position, but Ellis Jr. up into 4th place now. He's got his eyes set on Graham Carroll in front of him.
Yeah, but I think right now Robertson actually has to watch out for Sedgwick even more. Sedgwick in that 57 has been quite reserved this season, I felt, Paul. He's a previous World Championship competitor. He knows this car. I was expecting a bit more kind of aggressiveness from him, trying to show these guys just why he used to be in that World Championship. Robertson in front of him is going to have a bit of a challenge on his hands.
As they head on through the old hairpin once again, and then across under Starkey's Bridge, heading up towards McLean's. Onto the brakes. Here's Sebastian Job then at the front of your field. Jamie Fluke has caught up to him a little bit. He caught up 0.3 of a second that last lap. So Jamie's got the bit between his teeth, and he's really going for this one. We've seen how strong the drivers from the Apex Racing team are around here, but the Red Bull Racing Esports driver is Sebastian Job at the front doing a good job, and that is Thomas O'Leary, who's had an excursion out into the gravel trap at Coppice.
Yeah, replay up on your screen. Might be contact with the 13 from behind. That's Simeon Lynch. In fact, no. just carries a bit too much momentum through the corner, and fortunately he slides backwards, not into the path of oncoming traffic.
Yeah, thankfully for him, he's able to then carry on, get back up underway, and away he goes again. Down towards turn number 1 at Redgate. Through the leaders go. Pete Berryman, by the way, has gained a position. We've just saw it on the timing tower on the left-hand side there. Moved up ahead of Craig Williams. Josh Thompson as well. His recovery drive is going on. He's in 17th. Lee McNinch, sorry, battling with Josh Thompson there. So he's not giving up that position. And I believe that Josh has been having a few issues, technical issues, getting stuck frozen in gear. So having a few technical problems, having to work around them, that will also be exacerbating things here for Josh. But he's able to get away now.
And Josh was trying to compete in the iRacing 2021 24 Hours of Daytona, so a long weekend for him, and I'm sure those wheel issues not really what he would have wanted. Here comes Berryman back through the field. He's already up into 15th pole, chasing down the top 10. This is great stuff from Pete, and as he works his way in towards the conversation for the invert in our second race of the day, he might actually be starting on pole position once again.
I think that'll be a bit of a tall order, but you never say never with Pete. He's certainly one of the quickest drivers out there. He was our pole position setter as well. But Pete, this is showing a little bit of a difference between this track and this week at Donington and last week at Alton Park, because at Alton Park we saw Jamie Fluke having to try and work his way through the field and really struggled to work his way through the field as well, because overtaking opportunities are thin at Alton Park. But here at Donington, it's not easy to overtake. As he says that, Pete goes down the inside of Jordan Weeks, up a position now into 14th. But overtaking is not impossible around here. But Alton Park, it's pretty much impossible. You've only got 1 or 2 opportunities. Here you've got a few more opportunities and you can make it work. So Pete, he's giving it absolutely everything out of the old hairpin up towards McLean's once again, and he'll be setting his sights next on Matt Emery in front of him in that distinctive what would you say that is, lime coloured car in front of him with the Union flag on the front there. But yeah, he's certainly looking ahead. Behind them, by the way, Weeks and Craig Williams were battling, so the mid pack is giving us a bit of a show. The front, it's sort of staying as it is, so that's why we're focusing here further down the order, and to give some of these other drivers a bit of a show. And yeah, show that it's not just at the front of the field where the fighting is, although Kevin Ellis Jr. under pressure from John Robertson here.
I think at the front of the field they're a bit more cognizant rather of the fact that championship points are at stake here, Paul. This is a championship that they all want to win, and they've single-filed it out. They're struggling to close in, but John Robertson on the tail of Kevin Ellis Jr., who's now 1.5 seconds off that podium position that Gray and Carroll still occupy. So the top 3, they're separated by 1 second, and now the peloton starts to fall away.
Absolutely. Don't forget, it's your top 3 point scorers in the championship that receive prizes. £5,000 for first place. No, £7,000 should I say for first place. £5,000 for second, and £2,500 for third place. So Sebastian Job, he's got his sights set on earning himself some money here in the championship. Yeah, he comes into this round with a 21-point lead. Of course, Pete Berryman got pole position, so that bonus point for him means that Pete gets to take away a bonus point opportunity for Sebastian. But down towards the Melbourne hairpin again, you can see Sebastian is not panicking. He's just looking, checking his mirrors, looking around, seeing what's going on. He's very much composed and in control at the moment.
I need to maybe talk to him and learn a little bit from that. I did a couple of triple stints in my Daytona 24-hour race last night, and every time I had traffic around me, I found myself getting increasingly irritated. Seb's face was the perfect picture of calm right there, and that's what you need at the front of these races, Paul. You need that calmness to maintain your consistency, maintain your decision making ultimately, and Job 7/10 of a second clear continues to extend the gap once again.
Certainly does. It did just get narrowed, did that gap a little bit, but now Sebastian pushing on once again. We're into that final 10-minute stretch here. It is Job from Fluke and Carroll are your podium sitters at the moment. Kevin Ellis Jr. 4th ahead of John Robertson, with Jack Sedgwick in 6th place. Here's Pete Berryman now, 13th, battling with Simeon Lynch. Down the inside at McLean's. That's going to be chalking Pete Berryman up to 12th place now, and he's looking forward to Miroslav Nastolczyk in 11th place. So he's really is trying his best to move forward as far as he can. I do think with only 9 minutes remaining here, Arjuna, that a 6th place, which would give pole position, it's a little bit out of reach at the moment.
Yeah, I may have misread my timing screen. Unfortunately, Berryman's still about 7 seconds off Jack Sedgwick in 6th, so going to be a bit of a challenge, but nevertheless, Paul, he was down in 25th at one point. He's up to 12th. That is valuable grid position for our final race. I'm watching now to see what Berryman can do to work his way through the field in our feature.
Absolutely. I could see him possibly ending up, say, into the top 10, maybe even into 8th potentially at a push, but he's not really going to be much further forward than that. Graham Carroll putting the pressure on Jamie Fluke at the moment at the front of your field. You can see that the gaps there on screen. 0.8 of a second between your leader and second place. 1.2 from the leader is Graham Carroll, so pretty close between Jamie Fluke and Graham Carroll for second place. About 4 or 5 tenths of a second between those two. Heading round Coppice once again. Downhill, down the Starkey Straight. Unfortunately, no longer with the iconic Dunlop Bridge that would have been across the straight there. Over the curbs and out once again. And in towards the Melbourne hairpin. As I say, this is an overtaking opportunity down here into Melbourne. Goddard's is another one as well. Oh, back end just squirreling out on Jamie's. Oh, he's not happy with that as well. He's obviously talking to his engineer, his spotter there. But Jamie's, you can see he's under pressure now. Graham Carroll's got the flashing lights at him as well. He can sense blood in the water here, Arjuna. Yeah, and
what a contrast in comparison between Job and Fluke. Job very calm. You can see the frustration mounting as the mistakes pile up for Jamie Fluke. He still got second, but here comes Ellis Jr. from behind. He's closed that gap down to under a second, and he's bringing John Robertson and Jack Sedgwick with him as well. There is still a very interesting fight here, Paul, for our second and third steps on the podium.
But this goes to show that the level of competition that these drivers compete at. If I'd have made a mistake like that, it would have cost me half second a second. Whereas Jamie, it cost maybe a tenth or 2 tenths. And he's still frustrated with himself about that mistake as well. So it goes to show how much they put on each other and how much competitiveness these drivers have out there. And Graham Carroll certainly keeping the pressure on. Certainly keeping his car full in the mirrors of Jamie Fluke. Down to the Melbourne hairpin. And Graham is somebody very experienced, not just in the sim, but also real world racing and Formula Ford. Walter Hayes champion, Walter Hayes trophy winner, of course, is Graham. Down to Goddard's once again. This is a tricky corner because it drops away halfway around, so the car then in the second half of that hairpin just pushes wide and gives you a ton of understeer. But these two battling here, Arjuna, has allowed Sebastian to pull away. It was 0.8 of a second before. He's now 1.2 ahead of Jamie Fluke.
I wonder if he just made a small mistake on one of his laps. That's checked him up slightly and allowed the guys back into contention for just a few moments. Looks like Fraser Williamson has had an issue as well in what looks to be a very colourful car there. The chrome, very distinctive. Take a look at this replay, Paul.
Yeah, so what's happened? This is down at the Melbourne hairpin. It's a place where mistakes can happen. We saw Lewis Goodway earlier have a mistake, and he's had to get out of it because he was going for a gap there, and that gap was closing on the apex. Got off the throttle, and that's just sent the back end around, and that sent him spinning. Oh, no. We've got contact. That is the 13 Simeon Lynch then having issues. Oh, Josh Thompson just coming around there as well. Simeon Lynch and Miroslav Nastelchek battling out. They're still fighting out the gravel trap as well. So they're obviously keen to get one over each other, but that's dropped them further down the order. I don't know why Nastelchek is flashing his headlights, because Simeon can't see that at the moment.
Well, whatever happened, it's aggravated both of the drivers. You can tell from the body language of the car as they exited that gravel trap. They weren't too happy as they come down into the second to last corner. We'll take a look at this replay, Paul, and oh, that's a big send from the number 13.
Yeah, I can understand why Miroslav was not very pleased with that. That's a lunge into McLean's. That's never going to happen there. We'll have a look then under Starkey's bridge. Simeon's just too far back there. He's decided, I'm going to make a move, but he's not making the corner. And well, he ended up using the side of Miroslav's car to slow himself down. Back to your leaders then, and Jamie Fluke has pulled away a little bit from Graham Carroll by a couple of tenths on that last lap, so he'll be just getting a little bit of a breathing space. But behind Carroll now is Kevin Ellis Jr. So Ellis Jr. now is getting involved in this battle. There's 3 minutes remaining of this race here, and I hope you're all enjoying this Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain Championship. It's certainly been exhilarating racing throughout this championship. Down into the hairpin, and Carroll is getting sandwiched now. He's got that tricky situation here, Junior, as we look from Kevin Ellis Jr.'s car. Carroll has got that tricky situation of where he's got to attack in front, but he's got to be careful from behind as well. Absolutely, and it's looking like going to be two team cars on the podium. The question is, who's it going to be? Carroll versus Ellis Jr. Ellis Jr. has had a rather explosive start to this year, Paul, especially after winning our first World Championship weekend. What can he do here? He's looking very promising in the championship. I don't think he's wanting to get too aggressive with Graham Carroll this early in the season, but he's looking very rapid. Pete Berriman's moved up into the top 10 just to keep abreast of his charge through the field. He's up in 7th place now, and he's looking towards making a move to Kieran Harrison and Matthew Dorrington for 8th place. So those three, should I say, battling out towards the end of this race. But we're going to get one lap to go when they come across the line this time. So the race isn't over, but time is running out to make these moves and to make them count. It's down into the S's once again. John Robertson's not that far behind this battle either, so he's keeping these drivers honest as well. But Sebastian Job has moved out now 1.4, nearly 1.5 seconds in the lead of this race. So Sebastian feeling very confident at the front. But looking back from Jamie Fluke's car, Kevin Ellis Jr. giving a flash of the headlights, Arjuna. He's wanting that final spot there. He wants Graham Carroll's podium spot. I'm curious about what John Robertson wants to do in this situation. White flag waves. We're on the final lap of our heat race here today. Jamie Fluke, Graham Carroll, 2nd and 3rd. Ellis Jr. and Robertson, 4th and 5th. This should be a fun final lap. Through Hollywood then they go, plunge downhill through the Carrera curbs for the final time in this first race. Of course, 2 races here. Don't go anywhere, because after this first race we've got race number 2 coming up after a 10-minute break. A 10-minute gap between the 2 races where the drivers get to just relax and get their composure back for race number 2. Sebastian Job in the lead. He's not going to catch that lap traffic, but Fluke, Carroll, Ellis Jr. and Robertson all together for the middle at the 2nd and 3rd steps of the podium, down towards the S's for the final time here. No moves being made at the moment. And in fact, Graham Carroll just not quite close enough. I don't think he's close enough to make a move into the Melbourne hairpin. Onto the brakes. Nope, he's not close enough there to make a move. Kevin Ellis Jr. though, looking keen, but again, not quite there to make the move. So, it's going to be Sebastian Job then, with a third win in the row in this championship, comes out of Goddard's for the final time, and he wins the opening race here of the day in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. Jamie Fluke second place then, ahead of Graham Carroll. Kevin Ellis Jr. right behind them in fourth place. John Robertson fifth. Jack Sedgwick then, crucially for him, able to hang on to sixth place, which means that he will have pole position into the main feature race. Two cars across the line there together. That was Weeks and Williams, and it's going to be 13th for Williams, 12th for Weeks. Rest of the field coming across the line there. We've got a few stragglers towards the back of the field, but Arjuna, what an opening race that was, and really the key talking point really of this race was Pete Berryman down to the back of the field in the first lap there.
Yeah, and then back up into ninth as well. Impressive showing there. One more fun thing that we've got to see on these webcams, Paul. Sebastian Job comes across the line to take another race win. No big drama. It seems like that's business as usual for the Red Bull Esports driver. Can't wait now for the main event that lies ahead.
Yeah, we're just waiting on one final car to come across the line. That's going to be Bart Horston, who is down in 26th, was in the pits, and here it comes across the line then to take the checkered flag, if Barney would actually wave the checkered flag. So, here are then your race results from the opening race of the evening. There you go then, Sebastian Job then race winner ahead of Jamie Fluke in second place. Graham Carroll third, with Kevin Ellis Jr. at 1 point race leader Kevin Ellis Jr. in fourth place. John Robertson fifth ahead of Jack Sedgwick, who will start in pole position for the second race of the day. Isaac Price ahead of Matthew Dorrington then. Quite a big gap between those two. Pete Berryman then recovering back to 9th after falling down to 25th. Kieran Harrison, good showing from him in 10th place. 11th for Matt Emery, with Jordan Weeks and Craig Williams across the line together. Jamie Moon wasn't that far behind them either in 14th. Simeon Lynch, question of what might have been if he hadn't made that little bit of a dive into McLean's, down to 15th. Josh Thompson, he'll be absolutely gutted with that result there, only just a half a second ahead of Miroslav Nasilchek, with Liam McNinch and Ryan Parkins. Rafael Drash rounding out 20th place. Thomas O'Leary was down in 21st, with Fraser Williamson in 22nd. Lewis Goodway, we saw have a spin at the Melbourne hairpin at 23rd. Josh Webster and William Martin. And then Bart Horston we saw come across the line then the end, 26th. Every single driver finishing here in this opening race of the day here, Arjuna. And that's something that we've been seeing throughout this championship. There's been very few retirements happen in these races.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Everyone on the lead lap as well. It really shows that they're able to get out on track, battle it out hard, and still make things work. And sometimes, especially in this cup car, where it can be very slidey, like I mentioned before, it can be hard to go wheel to wheel. We saw Josh Thompson getting that slight contact with, I think that was Bart Horston, and that sent Horston into the pit lane, unfortunately. Other than that, though, no real major drama. So here we go then, couple of minutes of warm-up for all the drivers, and we get ready to go racing once again.
Yeah, absolutely. So the drivers, they get themselves, as you say, that time just to get prepared and get ready and take part in the second race of the day. And, well, we mentioned about the start. Well, here it is again. And this is, we'll look at Pete Berryman then. He gets a great launch off the start here, Arjuna. There's the green flag. Look at the launch that he gets. Sebastian Job was immediately having to cut in to cut off Kevin Ellis Jr. and then just tried to go around the outside. Wasn't going to make that move work, but he had the run coming down the Carrera curves here. As we, this is replay of the start of the race, and then this is the point here. Was there any contact? It's debatable. And even if there was contact, it is the slightest of touches. There's no intent in that, in my opinion.
I think it's one of those situations, Paul, where you try to just apply as much pressure as you can. You try and get as close to the rear bumper as you can. Try and force them to go as deep into the braking zone as possible. And it may very well have been a slight nudge, but there is obviously, we do have race stewards and that will take a look at all of these incidents come the end of the race. They'll be the ones that have to decide. Fortunately for us, we don't have to do that.
Well, what that did do, of course, was that allowed Kevin Ellis Jr. then to take advantage of Sebastian Job, because Job was compromised, and that allowed Ellis Jr. then to dash down to the outside and take the lead of the race, as we see more going on. Now, the next thing that we want to look at really is going to be Josh Thompson, because he was in that battle there, in that top 7 or 8 places, as they head on down to the chicane, and I do believe it is Horston that made the move down into the chicane. Technical problems affecting things. Look, he's late on the brakes, but he's made the apex there. That's the key thing, I think, for Horston. I mean, he's got suspension damage from that, but he made the apex of the chicane. It's an audacious move, especially on Josh Thompson. But opening lap of the race, you try and make the positions.
You know, I think Thompson is a bit conservative into the braking zone here. We'll try and take a look at an aerial angle and take a look at the gap in front and take a look at Horston from behind as Thompson gets onto the anchors. He kind of holds his position to the cars in front because they're going too wide. Horston decides to take advantage of the situation, lunges down the inside, gets the car slowed down just in time for the apex pole, and you'll see here Thompson just a bit too wide through that outside apex.
There isn't quite the room that I think Horston had only just left a car's width, but with the line that Thompson's taking through that chicane there, that car's width isn't going to be enough, is it?
Potentially. You've mentioned something in the past when we've talked about Josh Thompson though, Paul, and that was the maturity that Thompson has had to evolve and grow as a driver, and that, I think, is a clear indication of a driver that's recognizing a situation unfolding in front of him and doesn't want to get mixed up. He doesn't force an issue. Horston is the one that forces the issue in this situation, and ultimately, 2 into 1, there may not have been enough space, and again, race director has to take a look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Arjuna, you make a very good point there that there is stewarding that looks at the stewards that look at this afterwards. There's the move for the lead then on Kevin Ellis Jr. and Sebastian Job side by side with him all the way down the crane of curves. It's tremendous stuff there between the two of them. Again, great respect between the two of them to give each other space, just like they showed last week at Alton Park. And through the old hairpin they went, and that was the position switch there for the lead, and Sebastian Job never looked back after that. He was at the front of the field, but it's worth reminding people, the race stewards, they will look at any instance after the event, so after the second race, and if they do choose so, they can put time penalties on the drivers to adjust positions. So they've got a full range of penalties to look at available to them, but they may just decide that it could be that they just a race instant, if anything, in a few of these instances.
Yeah, very much so. And race directors for this series are experienced in iRacing. They run private leagues as well, so they know exactly what's going on. They have experience controlling and managing some of these drivers as well, Paul. So if it comes to a conversation between certain drivers and just maybe instead of penalties being handed out, warnings and messages being conveyed to drivers, that might be the approach race control decides to take. And we've just got a couple of minutes before we go racing for our feature race then, and I am very excited, Paul, about what we're lying in store. We're going to have this invert at the front where Jack Sedgwick's on the pole position. What can Sebastian Job do? What can Pete Berryman do to make their way through the field?
Absolutely, yeah. That's the key thing here. That opening lap with the cold tyres is going to be keen. But let's just have a look at the schedule then of this championships. This is round number 3 of the series here at Donington Park on the Grand Prix Loop. Next week, Snetterton, a very tricky track. It's quite a narrow track, is that one as well, but plenty of high speed parts, and it's on the 200 layout, so we're on one of the shorter layouts there, around there, and then we get a week off before we then head to Le Mans. Valentine's Day, what better place to go, Arjuna, than France on Valentine's Day?
And they get a week off before that as well, you know, not a bad thing indeed. And for some drivers that are stuck inside, that might be a quite nice virtual vacation, as it were. But very excited, Paul, about returning to Donington after that, the national configuration, but my favorite, Brands Hatch. What a place to finish off a season, and especially in a car like this. That is going to be highly entertaining stuff, and I'm a little bit disappointed Connery Maddock will be back instead of myself for that race.
Well, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to have you in the commentary box here. Of course, Connery, if you are wondering where Connery is a bit busy with the Daytona 24-hour coverage. So it is myself and Arjuna Kankapati here. But there's the way things run here today. So we've had race number 1, 25-minute race. We've had the warm-up, that's just finishing now in the next 25 seconds. Then race number 2 with that top 6 result. So those who finished in the top 6 in the results of the previous race, they get inverted. So 6th place starts on pole, and it works its way down to 6th place, and the rest of the drivers finish where they started. We've not had a look at the conditions here today at all. 18 degrees is the air temperature, track temperature quite warm for the UK, 34 degrees with partly cloudy skies, and certainly these drivers, towards the end of the races, will be feeling the effects of tyre wear and tyre degradation. Right now though, let's give you the starting grid of the second race then, and as we said, it is an inverted grid here, and it's Jack Sedgwick and John Robertson on row number 1, with Kevin Ellis Jr. and Graham Carroll row number 2, Jamie Fluke and Sebastian Job round out into row number 3, row 4, Isaac Price, Matthew Dorrington with Pete Berryman, Kieran Harrison, Matt Emery and Jordan Weeks row number 6. Row 7, Craig Williams, Ed Jamie Moon, Simeon Lynch, Josh Thompson, Miroslav Nasilchik and Lee McNinch. Ryan Parkins, Raphael Drage in row 10, Thomas O'Leary, Fraser Williamson, Lewis Goodway and Josh Webster. And then finally, the final 2, William Martin and Bart Horston. We had to fire through that grid there rather quickly because the drivers are getting themselves ready for the start of this one. So, all eyes looking forward to the gantry, the starting gantry, waiting for the green flag. Revs rise. Race number 2 of the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain from Donington Park is away. And it is Jack Sedgwick then at the front of your field, down towards Redgate for the first time. Look to the inside though, Kevin Ellis Jr. up into 2nd place ahead of John Robertson. Not the best of starts from John, because he's now got Graham Carroll working his way past him up into 3rd. So Carroll has moved forward here back into 3rd place where he finished in race number 1. And Sebastian Job up to 4th place. Great start for Seb as they head through the old hairpin for the first time. Everybody working their way through, keeping it clean. Everybody's still on track there. Fluke and Robertson, 5th and 6th. And Robertson's dropped down the order here in the opening stages of this race. Isaac Price in 7th place. And that is Josh Thompson again. This time with Raphael Drage, who have had an instant. We'll have a look at that later on in the race once everything has settled down, but down towards the S's for the first time then. Oh, that's run wide there for Sedgwick. Here comes Kevin Ellis Jr. for the lead of the race, down into the Melbourne hairpin, onto the brakes. Can Ellis hold that inside line? Yes, he can. Sedgwick's losing 2 places, losing 3 places, because Carroll and Job have moved the way through, and he's got a slow down penalty that he's got to serve. So now Fluke goes past Sedgwick. The two front row starters have had an absolute nightmare at the start of this race. So at the front, across the line in, Kevin Ellis Jr. once again finds himself at the head of a field in race number 2. Graham Carroll second and Sebastian Job in third place. Robertson and Sedgwick. Oh, there's contact between the two of them, and that's going to allow Pete Berryman. Great start for Pete. He's up to 6th place now from starting in 9th, and he's got his teammate, his compatriot in front of him in John Robertson. Great start for them as they go through the old hairpin, and well, let's hopefully everything will calm down here. But Arjuna, that was a sensational start, and unfortunate for Josh Thompson to have issues once again.
Yep, Thompson already reporting technical failures. Let's take a look at that replay as Sebastian Job is all over the back of his teammate right now, trying to get up into 2nd place to challenge Kevin Ellis Jr. There's the issue for Thompson. Just runs wide, unable to really go steer in any direction. Does the right thing, gets out of the way for the rest of his competitors. Here's the big issue though. It's Liam McNish involved in, oh, who's that other car, Paul?
So there was Rafael Draj was the 79, and the other car behind, I didn't quite catch who that was, but I think it might have been, he said McNinch was one of them. Josh Webster is, no, the number 11 is around. That is Josh Webster, so that is what happened to him down out of Coppice at the start. But we're back to live action here, live pictures. This is lap number 3 now. Kevin Ellis Jr. at the front ahead of Graham Carroll. Sebastian Job with the fastest lap of the race so far in 3rd place. And Jamie Fluke, John Robertson, Pete Berryman up to 6th place. Great start for him. Jack Sedgwick down to 7th now ahead of Isaac Price. Kieran Harrison and Matthew Dorrington rounding out the top 10 of the field. But Sebastian Job, he's just calmly just looks like he's on a Sunday afternoon drive here. He's just missing his flat cap and his pipe there to be able to make it a true Sunday afternoon drive. We're going to spin her down at the old hairpin, which I believe is Bart Horston. Yes, it is. There he is. So issues for Bart.
Oh, and it's more contact there as you also take a look at Sebastian Job, unfortunately. Not sure exactly who that other car was, Paul, but Horston, 2 races in a row, unlucky there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh dear, there'll be damage to that other car as well. But we'll get a look here as they come down the Carrera curve. So this was starting earlier on the Carrera curves. Fraser Williamson and Bart Horston, and we're on board. It's William Martin. Martin with a big dive into the old hairpin. You don't normally see that move there. Oh well, Martin then finds himself in 20th place. In fact, he's dropping down the order as I speak, down to 21st now. So those two settle themselves down across the line once again, and it's still Ellis Jr. in the lead ahead of Carroll, with Sebastian Job in 3rd place. So those 3 are trying to gap themselves away from Jamie Fluke, who's in 4th, Pete Berryman 5th. So Berryman up to 4 places at the start here for the Englishman. Great start from Pete, and he's really trying to push forward and try and get himself in a good position for the finish of this race.
Yeah, take a look on the left-hand side. You can see some of the movers and shakers. Your big losers so far, of course, pole position sitter Jack Sedgwick down in 7th place right now. What can other people do, though? The likes of Pete Berryman up 4 positions. You see Thomas O'Leary up 5 back there, as well as King Hippo himself, Ryan Parkins, up 6 places in the number 25.
William Martin has once again been off at the old hairpin on this lap. I can tell you that for sure because I've got a view of the old hairpin. There was 2 other drivers involved in that as well, so not been the best opening couple of laps for William. We'll see what's happened here. So that's the 74 then, and contact between the 2 of them, and that's Lewis Goodway, and behind him as well was the 76 of Jamie Moon, and just running wide there. It's tricky to go too wide through there and give each other space through the old hairpin, and unfortunately William Martin's the one that loses out in all of that.
Yeah, his second issue in this race so far, not how he would have wanted it, but 18 minutes still to go. He's got some time to try and maybe see if others fall by the wayside and he can recover some positions. Up front though, gap between 3rd and 4th pole now up to 1 second.
Yeah, so again, as I say, trying to gap out at the front to try and pull away. Not quite able to break the slipstream there, but they're certainly giving it an effort as they go through. Up towards Coppice once again, onto the brakes. And now, looking back, Sebastian Job looking at Graham Carroll. And he's looking to try and make some moves. None forthcoming. And the thing is, those two, they've got a good working relationship between the two of them. They've been teammates for as long as I've known them, and they really do work together. There's Sebastian Job looking to the inside of the hairpin. Carroll, you can hold the outside line there and get on the power sooner, and that will carry the speed out of the hairpin. Ellis Jr. will be hoping that these two fight each other tooth and nail as they go into Goddard's. And it's going to be Carroll staying ahead for the time being, but Sebastian Job setting his sights on positions forward.
I believe there was a controversy surrounding Red Bull in the recent past. There's something about Multi-21. Don't know if you remember that, Paul. Right now, it's Multi-21-22. Graham Carroll and Sebastian Job, they can't trip over each other right now, Paul. They're bringing Fluke, they're bringing Berryman back into the equation at this point in time. And Berryman, after being sent to the back of the field on lap 1 in our heat race, now stares at a podium position. He might even be thinking about the race win. So Pete Berryman, what a recovery drive so far. Sebastian Job, deep under brakes.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful as well that you don't fight too hard, because you'll allow the leader, Kevin Ellis Jr., to pull away. So it's that difficult situation that you find yourselves in where you want to attack and you want to get ahead of the car in front of you, but if you battle too hard, it then allows that leader to just pull away and become insurmountable, that lead. Let's have a look further down your field. Jordan Weeks got a little bit of assistance off the track there to number 66. And that was the 25 then of Ryan Parkins behind him. And just the smallest of touches into McLean's and oof, head first. Fortunately, that's a tyre barrier there, so that won't be too bad damage-wise.
Job up into second, though, under replay. So Carroll now down to third, unfortunately, Paul. We missed that one. It always seems to work out that way. But here comes that challenge from your world champion. He's on the back of Kevin Ellis Jr. What can he do in his quest to become the Porsche Carrera Cup GB champion?
Well, Sebastian now, he's got 15.5 minutes to slowly eat away at Kevin Ellis Jr.'s lead and put the pressure on. And Kevin won't be so forgiving and won't be so honourable in trying to hold on to that lead here, because Kevin needs to get a win here to try and minimise the points gap that Sebastian has pulled away. Of course, Sebastian won that opening race here, whereas Kevin Ellis Jr. finished 4th, so Sebastian pulled away a little bit in the championship standings after race number 1 on Kevin Ellis Jr. But Kevin, right now, he needs a win here just to try and minimise that effect of Sebastian pulling away. Of course, Sebastian coming into this week with a 21-point lead over the number 98 of Kevin Ellis Jr. In fact, there is Kevin then working the wheel in the bottom right of your picture. You can see Sebastian getting really close into the Melbourne hairpin. Those two into that corner like that, and a corner like Goddard here, where you've got a really heavy braking zone, really does exacerbate that. Concertina's together, but then it just spreads apart on corner exit. So it may look like he's getting really close, but really it's not too close for the time being as they go across the line once again. Lap 7 then done and dusted, and Job, bit between his teeth, he looks like he's just focusing a bit more. Looks like he's got a bit more pressure on here. Oh, it's Lewis Goodway. He's not having a good time at the hairpin here, is he, Arjuna?
He's not, but I think Thomas O'Leary through the gravel. Thomas O'Leary, a couple of replays to come up on your screen, Paul. Seems like everything's kicking off right now.
So this is Lewis Goodway and Bart Horston down into the hairpin. Horston, we've seen how aggressive he can be on the brakes, and Goodway, oh, they just carried too much speed there. and that sent him around, so that's not the best one for him there. We'll have a look at the replay. Oh, this is O'Leary. Oh, that's into Redgate, turn number 1. Got helped out there by the number 55 of Miroslav Neselchek. Neselchek, I mean, he himself went deep into Redgate as well, loses the position. Not that that'll be much of a consolation to the driver there, but to your race lead now. Ellis Jr. coming under intense pressure. Sebastian Job is going for it. He had a little look into the Melbourne hairpin. We just saw the end of that. So Job wants the lead and he wants it now. He doesn't want to wait to the last lap like he did last week.
He's got 12 and a bit minutes, Paul, and this is about experimenting, trying to find different opportunities to make the pass happen. However, watch in the background of the shot as well. Here comes Fluke. Here comes Berryman, here comes Robertson, here comes Cedric, here comes Isaac Price. The list of names goes on and on and on, Paul. These guys cannot afford to lose any time while battling with each other.
Yep, that is a 5-car, 6-car train. Right now, Job looking to McLean's. He can make a different line into McLean's, as we saw in qualifying. Coppice then carry the speed through the first part, because you carry that speed all the way down Starkey Straight. And in towards the S's once again. On the brakes. Kevin Ellis ahead of Sebastian Job. Graham Carroll looking menacing. He's wanted a win. He wants to get a win in here. Here comes Sebastian Job looking to the inside of Melbourne. That's not going to happen. And here comes Jamie Fluke now. Fluke onto the back of Carroll. And the rest of them following along. Sedgwick and Price, they're not that far back, about a couple of seconds off of the back of this train. So this 6-car train at the moment could become an 8-car train in just a few moments. Ellis Jr. though, he's looking relatively calm, he's looking relatively composed. He knows what he needs to do there at the front, and he knows that by all costs he needs to keep Sebastian Job behind him.
It's interesting comparing across Job and Ellis Jr. They have very similar facial expressions. One of them, though, is a bit more animated in the way they drive the car. Look at Ellis Jr. as he himself is swinging his head from left to right through the corners. He's feeling the pace right now. He's in the zone. What can he do to hold on to first position?
Here they are then, McLean's. Job just a little wide through McLean's. That's not the ideal line there. That'll just cost him maybe half a tenth of a second, so Ellis Jr. just gets a little bit of respite here. But behind Job, Carroll, Luke, Berryman, Richardson. Richardson, of course, started on the front row of the grid in second place, down to 6th place in this race. Jack Sedgwick, he'll be absolutely gutted with how that first lap turned out, all the way down to 7th place. But he's trying to get back to this lead gaggle of cars as they come through the Melbourne hairpin once again. Up towards Goddard, onto the brakes. Have the car drop away from underneath them. Car pushing wide on the exit, over the curb. Another lap in the books here. 10 laps have been completed here. We've got 10 minutes to go. Sebastian Job holds the fastest lap of the race, a 1:29.006. Compare that to Kevin Ellis Jr.'s best, which is a 1:29.354. So there's about 0.3 of a second difference in the fastest laps here. Of course, Job has had the slipstream pretty much all the way through this race, whereas Ellis Jr. has been out at the front. He's not had that slipstream. He's working those tyres onto the brakes through McLean's once again. And Job now, I think he's playing that patient waiting game right now. He knows he doesn't need to do anything rash. Look at that though, Ellis Jr., the back end just sliding out a little bit through Coppice with the power application. This is Job looking, he's forcing Ellis Jr. off of the racing line here. He's trying to compromise him, trying to set him up for the exit of the S's. And Ellis Jr. immediately goes defensive there on Job, side by side into the Melbourne hairpin. Ellis Jr.'s got the inside. Job can get on the power on the outside a little bit better though as they head towards Goddard. This is for the race lead once again. Onto the brakes, and it's going to be Job to the inside of Goddard's. Ellis Jr. has been given the space. Very good, respectful racing between the two of them. They come across the line together once again. Job, Ellis Jr. onto the brakes for Redgate. All Graham Carroll can do here is watch. Job runs wide. That's a mistake from Job. And now that means that Carroll is up to second place, but Ellis Jr. he's rattled. He's feeling the pressure now here, Arjuna, as they go into the old hairpin.
I'm watching his webcam feed right now. I don't know if he's actually feeling the pressure. I think he played that situation exactly how he wanted to. He forced Job to look aggressive. He forced Carroll to then try and find a way past his teammate, because look at the train of cars queuing up behind the two teammates on the second and third step of the podium. It's Fluke, it's Berryman, it's Robertson. It's a 5-car battle for the podium and for the race win here at Donington Park.
Down Starkey Straight once again. Carroll, he's looking keen. He wants to make some moves through the S's. Ellis Jr. keep it to the racing line for the time being as they head down to the hairpin. Carroll looking to the inside, trying to make Ellis move about under braking and compromise his line. Not happening this time though, as they go into Goddard's once again. 7 minutes remain in this race, and Ellis Jr. doing a fantastic job at the front. We saw a tremendous defensive display from him in the opening round of the Porsche Carrera Esports Super Cup. We also saw a tremendous defensive display from him at Silverstone and at Alton Park. It didn't pan out for him at Alton Park, but he did win that second race at Silverstone. Down the Carrera curves, onto the brakes once again. Through the old hairpin. Carroll is looking, he's just patiently waiting there. He's setting his line. He's just thinking, where am I faster? Where can I start making Kevin move about? We saw how, when we were on board with Job a moment or two ago, how Ellis Jr. just gets a little bit squirrely occasionally out of coppers here, applying that power down. Much better from Ellis Jr. Down to the S's once again here, onto the brakes. And Carroll's just got to he's got to be patient. He's got to wait for that opportunity. He can't just make a rash move here.
Yes, he's got to wait. He's got to find that one opportunity and not let the door be open for his teammate Sebastian Job or any of those other cars queuing up behind him. If you're Kevin Ellis though here, Paul, what do you do? How defensive are you willing to go? If Carroll makes a bold move, do you block him? Do you risk championship points and a race win here at Donington? It's going to be interesting. 5.5 minutes still left to go.
I mean, this is ideal for Kevin right now. The fact that his main competitor, Sebastian Job, is in third place, that's just helping him mitigate the loss of points from race number 1 of Seb winning that race. Pete Berryman, 5th place, we're on board with him. He's behind Jamie Fluke. You can see Jamie Fluke's car just moving about through the Carrera curves. And in fact, looking ahead, Job is looking like he's wanting to make a move on Graham Carroll. Carroll's now feeling the pressure, and this is the opportunity that Kevin Ellis Jr. needs to take now. He needs a lap or two of his life here to try and pull away from these two, whilst these two try and sort themselves out here. Job, he does appear to be the slightly faster of the two of them between Carroll and Job, but he's behind Carroll, and Carroll's quite rightly wanting to hold on to that position through the S's. Job, great run through the S's, swings it out to the right hand side into the Melbourne hairpin. Carroll realises and he recognises that that's not going to be worth defending. Job moves back into second place after that mistake at Redgate, but now focus is going to be put purely on Kevin Ellis Jr. at the front of the field. But Carroll, he's got the pressure from behind because Fluke, Berryman and Robertson all ready to pounce here as we hit the 4-minute mark to go.
So the question still is, which team is going to have two drivers on the podium? Going to be a very interesting dash all the way to the line. Sebastian Job, though, has half a second to close on Kevin Ellis, and then 3.5 minutes to find his opportunity. I wonder, Paul, if him getting passed by his teammate just a few laps ago has compromised Job all the way to the flag.
But the thing is, with Job there, it was his mistake. He was trying to make the move, and he ran out wide onto the marbles, and that cost him at Redgate. Lost him one position. He was lucky not to lose any more positions, to be honest, with the queue of traffic that's behind them. This is a tremendous battle between two outfits, 6 drivers, as they head down the Starkey Straight once again. And Kevin Ellis through the S's. Onto the power, Job waiting. He's not close enough to make a move yet, but Job can sense the opportunities coming. You can see how they get closer together through the braking zone, but on the exit, corner exit, Job not quite staying there for the time being. Onto brakes again into Goddard's. It's important to get a good run out of Goddard's because that sets you up for the start and finish straight, and you can make a move down into Redgate. 2.5 minutes remain, so we've got 2 laps of this race remaining here today. And Sebastian Job, a pillar of focus, and he is doing everything he can here, Arjuna, to try and force the error from your leader.
And Ellis Jr. is looking impervious to the pressure, and Job is doing what he tried to do to Berryman on the opening lap of our heat race. Put the pressure on, get as close to the rear bumper as he can, and force Ellis to be driving defensively. 98, though, doing a fantastic job. Job closes, though, so we head down into Coppice.
Yeah, still opportunities, still time here. But time is running out. Look at Ellis just holding that tighter line. Berryman up to 4th place, then he's made it past Jamie Fluke. So all of a sudden Pete is going to be in the mirrors of Graham Carroll, and Graham will be feeling the pressure from Pete. Pete has been the pretty much the fastest driver of the field by a couple of tenths overall, but it's in the race where it counts. Qualifying, yeah, you get a bonus point for pole position, but that's it. As they go up the hill into the braking zone, Job looking to the inside of Goddard's. He's wanted to make the move. Kevin Ellis Jr. is out wide. He's going to get the better run out of the corner, but they're side by side across the line. 1 minute remain, 1 lap remains in this race. Job being squeezed to the outside line by Ellis. Kevin Ellis with the inside out of Redgate. Down the crane of curves they're going to come. Side by side, we've got another side by side battle for the lead between Ellis Jr. and Job. 2 weeks in a row into the old hairpin. Final time, you've got to get your line right. Ellis Jr. runs a little bit wide. That's going to compromise his run up towards McLean's. Will Job make a move? No, he won't. He's just trying to move about. He's trying to get the cut back for the inside into Coppice. You can make that move stick. He's going to look into Coppice here. Ellis Jr. is giving him the space. He could get on the power earlier out of Coppice though, but Job's got the inside line out of Coppice, but now it's the inside line for the S's for Ellis Jr. Jr.'s got the power into the S's once again, up over the curves. Hopefully, no corner cut there. The time is running out. Here we are on the final lap. Onto the brakes. Job under pressure from his teammate Carroll because he's got Berryman and Fluke with him as well. Out towards Goddard's for the final time, and it's going to be Ellis Jr. who's going to win this one because Job is under pressure from behind at the final corner. Kevin Ellis Jr., you can see the relief and the excitement on his face. He is delighted with that for a race win. Across the line, the front 6 covered by 1.4 seconds across the line there. Ellis Jr., yes, you might wipe your foot and burrow there because that is a sensational defensive display once again from Kevin. The rest of the field are going to be coming through across the line very shortly, but Arjuna, we almost had it again. This series keeps on giving us a great final lap battle.
I'm absolutely blown away by what we just witnessed. Incredible, respectful racing. Berryman almost getting onto the podium on the second to last corner. But ultimately, look at the face, look at the smile on the number 98. Kevin Ellis Jr., what a year it's been so far, Paul. He's already won a World Championship race so far, and now he wins here in the Porsche Carrera Cup GB.
We'll get to speak to him hopefully in just a short while, but here we will be able to give you your unofficial race results, of course, pending any stewards' outcomes later on afterwards. So it is a win then for Kevin Ellis Jr., the man from Glasgow. He'll be delighted with that. Sebastian Job in second place on the rostrum there. Graham Carroll, though, putting the pressure on at the end because there was only 1600ths of a second between him and Pete Berryman for that final step of the podium. Jamie Fluke finished 5th ahead of John Robertson in 6th. Jack Sedgwick 7th after starting on pole position. He'll be a little bit disappointed with how that opening lap went for him. Isaac Price finishing just, and I mean just, ahead of Kieran Harrison in 9th place, with Matt Emery rounding out your top 10. 11th place for Matthew Dorrington ahead of Simeon Lynch. Fraser Williamson, a good recovery drive for him after race number 1. He finishes in 13th place after gaining 9 positions in that race. Craig Williams 14th ahead of Ryan Parkins. Thomas O'Leary and Bart Horston 17th, with Miroslav Neselchek, who got involved in a little shenanigans up at McLean's. Jamie Moon and Liam Ninch are the last of the drivers to finish this race, because drivers who did not finish: William Martin, Josh Webster, Jordan Weeks, Lewis Goodway. There's a big one though, Josh Thompson, and then Rafael Drage rounds out the 26 cars who took part in this race. My goodness, I need a lie down after this. That was sensational stuff. That last lap, Arjuna, I mean, we're showing it right now. Once again, this championship, it just keeps on delivering the excitement right to the end of the race.
This is a car in the real world, Paul, that we use to develop the next generation of racing talent. And guess what? It does the same here in the virtual world as well. It's incredible the level of competition that this car has brought to the iRacing service over the past 2 years, and it continues to evolve and grow. And we started with the Porsche Esports Super Cup, and now these Porsche Esports Carrera Cups are allowing people across the globe to enter national competitions for prize money and ultimately to prove to everyone that they are the best in their country.
Absolutely. As we'll look at this then, so Sebastian Job, that look to the inside of Coppice, I thought Ellis Jr. had maybe made a mistake of leaving the gap open there, but then he squeezed Sebastian down Starkey Straight. I mean, that's a dangerous game to play there, but he got the line into the S's, and then this is where it all fell apart a little bit for Sebastian's fight for the lead, because Graham Carroll, he had to make some moves because Pete Berryman was right there, and so too was Jamie Fluke.
And you can see Carroll goes to the inside as well as Fluke. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out for them as they trip over each other very slightly, and they'll stay basically how they entered that second to last hairpin. But unfortunately for them, man of the moment, Kevin Ellis Jr. across the line to take the checkered flag as Barney the flagman waves it.
Yeah, absolutely sensational stuff once again, and hopefully we'll be able to speak to our race winner right now. Kevin, what is it with you and Sebastian getting those last lap battles side by side?
Yeah, we can't seem to get enough of each other at the minute. The last couple of weeks have been, yeah, they've been really great fun with Seb. Obviously, he got me last week. I managed to come out on top today, and yeah, I've not quite stopped shaking yet. I don't know if you'll be able to tell through the camera, but yeah, the last 10 laps of that race was really, really tense. You know, first of all, I had Graham really close behind me, and then I saw Seb get there, and it was just, yeah, it was just when Seb got second behind me, I started thinking, oh, here we go again. It's going to be a repeat of Bolton Park, but no, we just managed to hang on at the end there.
Yeah, that was sensational stuff. I mean, we'll look back just briefly, touch on race number 1. Finished in 4th place. Overall for this week, it will mean that you've lost slightly, a couple of points here and there compared to Sebastian, but still, you must be happy with not just with yourself, but also your teammates in and around there. They were all working together and all right up there throughout these races.
Yeah, obviously race 1, I was pretty disappointed with that. That's 2 weeks in a row now. I've just sort of clipped the grass on entry, which is not really like me. Normally I'm able to kind of prevent those kind of things from happening. So, yeah, I've just got to make a slight adjustment to what I'm doing. I think mentally, I think there's something I need to sort out there, because obviously this can't be happening. It's good to obviously beat Seb in race 2, but yeah, as you pointed out, he won race 1, so overall it's a net loss. So yeah, we've got to try and get rid of these kind of mistakes. They can't really be happening when we're fighting with Seb in the championship, and even Graham and Pete as well. I mean, yeah, I mean, as you said, all the guys done so great today. I think we had all 4 of us in the top 6, and it was just the other 2 Red Bull guys with us as well. And yeah, everyone done a really great job. Pete got a bit unlucky on the first lap. I think Seb just tipped him round at turn 4 on the first lap. So I think he done a great job to get back from wherever he ended up. I think he was outside the top 20 at one point, I think. And yeah, managed to get back to P4. So a great job from him. And yeah, Jamie and John as well. I mean, everyone's been so solid this weekend, done a really great job, and it's nice to be able to put a bit more effort into this. Now that we've not got the Super Cup happening on the same weekend, you could sort of focus a bit more on this, and I think that's probably helped us just a little bit as well.
And just very briefly, next time out we're at Snetterton on the 200 layout, which is not the full layout, but what are your thoughts on that? Because it is quite a tricky track to get a hang on, and it's a difficult track to overtake at as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be quite tough, but we have got quite a long front straight, which will allow you to get close. And obviously, out of I think turn 3, that long back straight as well, I think you might actually have some opportunities there. That it seems with the current slipstream model with this car, there's an awful lot of draft and not an awful lot of dirt air, so it's quite easy to follow pretty close. So I think at Snetterton you might see a bit more overtaking than you saw today. The only concern really is the corners that the straights lead into might be a little bit difficult. Like obviously turn 1's quite hard, it's quite high speed, so it's not quite as easy to send someone on the brakes. But ultimately, I mean, we'll just need to see. Turn 2 could be good as well. It's going to be crazy, I know that much. If today's anything to go by, you know, the last few rounds of this has actually been really, really fun. You know, everyone's so close on pace that it really just comes down to who's got the better racecraft when it comes down to it. And yeah, I think next week at Snetterton you're really going to see. You're going to see almost like a NASCAR race, I reckon.
well, go away, have yourself a drink and calm your nerves after that one. But congratulations on winning race number 2 here, though.
No, thanks a lot, Paul. See you guys next week.
There we go then. Kevin Ellis Jr., race winner for race number 2, and he'll be absolutely delighted with that performance, the defensive display. Once again, Kevin having to show that, and well, just a moment we'll be able to speak to race 1 winner. In fact, here he is, Sebastian Job. Then Sebastian, let's get this out of the way. You got a great win in race number 1, and we've got to ask the question: was there the slightest of contact with yourself and Pete down at turn 1? If it was ever so slight.
I have to say I didn't feel a thing, and I also didn't get a 0x contact from the game, and I also almost spun it myself. So I don't know if there was a combination of maybe a small tap and the cold tires. Yeah. Because I watched Pete's onboard, and you can't tell if there's a hit. Like only he knows the answer. Like I honestly couldn't tell you if he felt it, because the way that he lost the car was very gradual. Yeah. As if it was cold tires. So I'm really not sure. If he did get hit, then I'm very sorry for it, and I expect a penalty. But yeah, it's a shame. But I felt nothing from my side, so yeah, a bit of a shame.
But let's look at the positives of race 1 as well, though, because you were able to control things out at the front of the field once again, and to get that race win. You've going away from this weekend with a slight advantage over Kevin Ellis Jr. again in terms of gaining some points, because race 2 you had your hands full with your teammate, let alone Kevin.
Yeah, race 1 was really good. But I kind of, once I had a bit of a gap, it was more just trying to learn a bit. In the warm-up and the qualifying, I didn't feel very confident. I just couldn't get into any rhythm. And I wasn't in a proper rhythm until race 2, really, when I was chasing down the guys in front. And then I started to be a bit more confident. So, and for me, doing like that race 1 all by myself was really useful. I didn't have to fight anyone, so that was like perfect for me. And then race 2, yeah, just a few mistakes when trying to go for the overtakes, particularly in turn 1 and the hairpin. And if I didn't make those mistakes, I maybe could have just pulled it off. But Kevin defended really well, and made sure to punish me for those mistakes. So yeah, hats off to him. It's nice to have another really good battle.
Well,
But yeah, wasn't meant to be this week.
It's becoming a sort of running theme of this championship, isn't it? Race 2, final lap, you two battling it out. Long may it continue, I say.
Yeah, I was having flashbacks, and I was thinking, oh, if I could pull this off again, that'd be nice. But yeah, it was still a good battle. I really tried to hang it on the outside through turn 2, through the S's, but I realised I just didn't have the grip on that outside line. It's very tricky in this weather, you know. You're not doing it flat out with this setup. Sorry, it's right on the limit of being flat out. So if you're on the outside there, you've got to do quite a big lift, and you just can't stick it on the outside there. So yeah, bit of a shame, but I tried.
And let's just look ahead then. You know, you've had a very positive start to the championship then. You came into this week with a 21-point lead. Is it just that same old thing of just taking it week by week and see what comes in the series?
Yeah, exactly. I have a bad feeling that I'm going to lose points to Kevin this week, and so that 21-point lead will be a bit smaller. But I was thinking about it during the race. There was one lap I backed off just to try and go for fastest lap, get that extra point. You know, it's small things like that that make the difference in the end. So yeah, like you say, just taking it week by week, getting as many points as possible on the board. You know, a second place is better than a DNF. So yeah.
Well, congratulations anyway, and another really impressive performance today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
There we go then. Race 1 winner, and well, Sebastian, he was very magnanimous with that, wasn't he, Arjuna, and very sort of thoughtful as to what happened in that race 1. He's expecting a penalty. Personally, from what we saw of that race 1 red incident down at the old hairpin, excuse me, I didn't think there was any malice in it, and I think it was just maybe a racing incident with cold tyres on lap 1.
All I know for sure is, Paul, I'm glad I'm not the race director for this one, because like he said, it's going to be a marginal call. Cold tyres played in effect.
Yeah.
He says he doesn't even feel the impact. What does Pete Berryman say? Interesting storyline. Race results are not official, and it sounds like he's expecting that he'll be behind Kevin coming into our next race weekend. So your world champion in this series is now going to start to struggle a little bit as we head into a very interesting middle portion of the championship.
Absolutely. So, as I said, the next race is going to be in a week's time at Snetterton on the 200 layout. Good little preview from Kevin Ellis Jr. there. That you've got the high-speed straights of the pit straight and the back straight as well. You've really got those high-speed sections, so you can get some slipstreaming done there. But it's the corners that come into it where it's quite sweeping corners, which will be the tricky part to make the move stick. And then we'll have a week off before Le Mans. Donington Park will be back here for the national layout, Silverstone International, and then Brands Hatch rounds out your championship at the start of March. But thank you everybody for joining us here on the broadcast. It's certainly been great to bring it to you. From myself, Paul Smith, Arjuna Kankapati's been on double duty. He's been on commentary and in charge of the cameras and the graphics, so thank you very much to him. Thank you to Istvan Ballo, TrackCams22 and Tyler Maxon for our camera packs, and also to ATivo as well for our brand new graphics overlay. It certainly is looking really, really nice. Make sure you follow us on social media, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and as always, join us for the next exciting races here on RaceSpotTV. But for myself, Paul Smith, and everybody here at RaceSpotTV, goodbye.